Women's rights? What's the point?
So in the Western world, it seems to be about creating a collective body which discriminates against men using fallacious tactics. Now, to give an example of a fallacious tactic which they use would be the exclusion fallacy of the wage gap myth. You know, that myth where you're allowed to state that women on average earn less than men, but you're not allowed to state any other criteria which will paint a much better picture, such as men work longer hours and are more willing to do overtime.
What if I were to tell you there was one surefire way of growing the global economy?
To be honest, I wouldn't really care that much because I don't really care that much about the economy, because when economists analyse prices, wages and the allocation of scarce resources, they do this from a holistic perspective, meaning that they look at how policies affect the people's standards of living as a whole, which means that a certain percentage of the population standard of living could be dropping, while another certain percentage's standard of living could be rising. And when you take a statistic from the whole, this rising could mask the dropping of the other certain percentage. So I more care about everyone's standard of living rising. So hope that answers the question.
That there is a vast opportunity that is being underused in every single country across the globe. That opportunity is women.
So this wouldn't be every single country, would it? Because in this country, being Britain, and also being the country which your husband was Prime Minister of, there is equality of opportunity for women.
McKinsey estimates that closing the gender gap in economic activity could boost global GDP by an additional $28 trillion by 2025.
So I've just had a skim through the highlights of this report, and what Mrs. Blair is doing here is giving the report best case scenario. What the report actually says is that solving gender equality around the world could add up to $12 trillion to the world's GDP, but in a best case scenario, £28 trillion. What she's saying is right, but I just think it needs to be clarified that they're actually saying $12 trillion, and this $28 trillion is actually a best case scenario.
The smart economics argument has gained huge traction in recent years, with everyone from the UN to the private sector linking gender equality with financial reward, myself included.
So, is this the same United Nations which allowed Anita Sarkeesian and Zoe Quinn to do a full-on moan-a-thon about receiving what they call abuse, but what I would call criticism online? Now, I'm pretty sure some of it is just abuse, but we all know that they also class criticism as abuse as well. Now, when you've got a great big powerful body like the UN, allowing two girls in just to moan about getting criticism, you could say that they have an agenda, and I'm not really going to take anything which they say for granted.
But should we be really just focusing on translating arguments for women's empowerment into financial forecasts? Isn't the fight for gender equality supposed to be about aspiring to a higher ground, rather than becoming fixated on the bottom line? Across the world, women are shut out of the labour market, confined to insecure, poorly paid work.
So one suggestion I would make to you, and that is to stop using these fallacious tactics, because when you use these fallacious tactics, it gives some ammunition to the opponents of actual gender equality in these third world countries, because the opponents of actual gender equality in these third world countries actually use the slippery slope arguments. Now, The thing is about fallacious tactics is that they actually work. They do convince people. That's why you're using them right now. So when you're going around trying to control men using fallacious tactics, they're going to use the argument, well, don't give women equality of opportunity, because all of a sudden we're going to get like the Western world where you're going to get a load of raving feminists who want to control men.
And forced to shoulder a massively disproportionate burden of care work.
Who's going around forcing women to shoulder the massive disproportionate burden of care work? I've just never seen that. I've never seen a government agency or a group of men put a revolver to a woman's head and say, do this. The only way I can see them being forced is because they have a natural disposition to prefer doing care work, which is a positive liberty argument, and positive liberty arguments suck anyway.
All because of their gender. Underlying all of this is a fundamental belief that women aren't as capable or qualified as men.
Well, it depends on the occupations really, because there are some occupations where women are seen as being superior to men, but there's other occupations such as like firefighters where it's seen as an advantage to have some strength, and in these occupations, yeah, men are seen as being more capable of doing that job. Also, on average, men have a higher IQ, so they're going to make up the higher percentage of the people at the top. It's just the way things are.
This sexist belief is outdated and dangerous.
It's not sexist, it's not outdated, and it's not dangerous. What it is empirical and scientific.
As well as stunting economic growth, it limits the dreams, aspirations and potential of millions of women and girls across the world. In 2018, we need to wake up to the fact that women make up half the global population.
So I don't think that anyone is under the illusion that they don't.
They deserve equal access to economic opportunity, not because they are instruments of growth, but because they are human beings.
So I do actually agree with this. The only objection I take is the use of all countries and the constant use of pictures of Western women, because it's this card that keeps getting played. The fact that treating groups of people like they're interconnected, like they're all part of one great big machine, and if this group is getting discriminated in place B, they automatically getting discriminated in place A. In reality, that's just not true.
So let's not fight for women's economic equality just because it makes financial sense. Let's fight because it's the right thing to do.